This is a new volume we are going to study. That is 49a. So this is on the life of the Buddha. It's a series of books that select various suttas that talk about the life of the Buddha. The Buddha is not the kind of person who talks much about his life. He only tells us stories about his life when it's connected directly with the teaching, in other words. So it's not about promoting a person or even a teacher. It's about promoting the teaching, and this is generally the principle in early Buddhism. So we see very interesting details in this kind of suttas, the biographical suttas. But this first sutta, Mahasihanada Sutta, is not exactly about the life of the Buddha. It's more about how he teaches, about how he counsels. In a sense, it's about his patience. So in that sense, it's about the Buddha as a person, as a teacher. The title Mahasihanada, let's work backwards, okay? The sutta, of course, is the most familiar term that we know. It means, sutta simply means thread, actually. Here, it is used in a sense of this teaching has been woven together, they're connected. So if you follow the suttas, you get this idea, this teaching going back right to the Buddha's time. So it's a thread going back to the Buddha's time, so to speak. You know? And another meaning is that all the suttas, they are interconnected, interwoven. So you get all these threads being threaded together. You get, a kind of tapestry, a kind of very nice canvas, if you like. The middle word, Siyanada, lion roar. Literally, it means lion's roar, or I translate it as lion roar. Siha is lion. Siha, Sinha, in Sanskrit, Singha. So from Singha you get Singha, and then plus Pura. Pura means city. Singapura is the Malay name for Singapore, or should we say the ancient Indian name. And of course, the British couldn't pronounce it exactly, so they kind of anglicized it, become Singapore. Okay? So Singapore, city of the lion, according to local legends, one of the early founders saw an animal which he identifies as a lion. Of course, there's no lions here, so we do not know what animal that he saw. It could be a tiger, it could be some. It could be just a myth, kind of to give a story of courage, of ingenuity to this city. Anyway, so another means a roar, a loud sound, okay, to make a sound. So Siyanada is based on the metaphor that the lion is the king of the forest, the lord of the jungle. When the lion roars, it's a very resonant sound. I heard the lion's roar a few times. You go to the museum, you go to the zoo, and you just wait, especially mealtime, I suppose, nearing mealtime, you can hear this very loud, resonant sound. Okay, you need quite big lungs for that. And the other animals will cower. They are terrified. There is a sutta on the Siyanada Sutta where it says these animals of the jungle will run and hide in their own homes. Some of them will just pee and poo wherever they are. They get terrified when they hear the lion's roar. But when it's used for the Buddha's teaching, while the teaching does strike fear in the devas, because the deva do not like hearing about impermanence, they fear that they will lose their status as devas, that they will die, so there's fear there. But for those who have faith, for those who love wisdom, they actually feel happy. So when you hear the lion, like when we hear the lion, we say, wow, that's a nice sound. So Sihanada, the lion roar, refers to the teaching of the Dhamma generally, but specifically it refers to a particular kind of statement, usually made by the Buddha, but it can be made by a disciple also. And of course, we can also make a lion roar. I don't mean make a lion roar, I mean make a lion -roar. In other words, you roar like a lion and to speak the Dhamma. When the Buddha, here the sutta is about the Buddha making this lion roar. The whole sutta is his lion roar. The sutta is talking about what are the great teachings in early Buddhism that you don't see elsewhere, that makes this sutta or the Buddha's teaching loud like a lion roar. This teaching is so distinct, so liberating in the jungle that is the world, that is the cosmos. The disciples also make lion roars. The Pindula Bharadwaja was the foremost of monks who make lion roar, makes a lion roar. Why is he the foremost of the monks who make lion roars? Because he made this remark, he says, if anybody has any doubt in the Dhamma, come to me, I will clear the doubt for you, something like that, yeah? But in a sense, you can say our Dhammafera Facebook is also a lion roar, because there also our standing invitation is, if you have any problems, you come to us, we'll try and clear it for you. We'll try to answer it for you, and we'll make it a rule to answer whatever useful questions are being asked. We are very happy to provide sutta translations. Sometimes the suttas have not been translated yet, and people request, and we especially translate for them, because those are really very good suttas. Frankly, I have yet to see a sutta that's really not useful or not interesting anyway. So all the suttas are interesting. So the disciples, they also make their lion roar. Sariputta is very famous for making his lion roars. He will, in certain teachings like in the Sampasadanaya Sutta, he will declare, say, wow, the Buddha has all these wonderful teachings. He even declared once that he knows the Buddha very well. And then the Buddha said, wow, how do you, that's an amazing statement you have made, to say you know the Buddha. It's very interesting. You often see this tension between the Buddha and Sariputta. Sariputta is the wisest of the monks. He sometimes seems to say things which appear at first to contradict what the Buddha teaches. For example, here he says, I know the Buddha very well. Then the Buddha says, wow, because the Buddha has made a statement that it is impossible to know the Buddha because he is of such a nature that his mind is not the way like that of others. But here Sariputta actually says something which seems to contradict what the Buddha has said. So the Buddha asked him, are you saying that you know all the Buddhas of the past? Of course Sariputta has to say, no, I don't know all of them. Do you know, do you think you will you meet future Buddhas? Not likely. Do you even know the present Buddha? So of course the Buddha has to say no. So we have a problem now, you see. Sariputta says he knows the Buddha, but here he has to say no to the Buddha. So you have another tension here. Is Sariputta telling the truth or not? So this is the interesting part. So then the Buddha asked Sariputta, how do you know? Right? And the Buddha, Sariputta is very wise. He gives a very simple answer. He says, Dhammanvaya. Okay, Dhammanvaya. The drift of the Dhamma. Okay. So if you know the Dhamma, you know this. Okay, that one nobody can contradict, you see. So the drift of the Dhamma. What he's saying, I'm speaking in terms of the Dhamma. If you know the Dhamma, you also know the Buddha. So it's not talking about the Buddha as a person. He's talking about the Buddha as, if you like, as an embodiment of the teaching, the Dhamma. So you see this kind of very interesting dialogue between these two really great minds. Okay, so that's a kind of lion roar also. Now, what about normal followers like us? We too can make lion roars. No? Especially, basically it means you stand up with courage. You stand up for Buddhism. You say, I'm a Buddhist, And I make it a point whenever I go to a place where, especially it's not a Buddhist place, like we went for this, some social work stuff. There are very few Buddhists doing social work, so we have to go to this. The only place we can go to is this one run by some church, and most of them are Christians there. So when our turn came, we clearly told them, looking at them right in the eye, and say, we are Buddhists. And they're all looking down, so very quiet. And that was a very happy moment for us. We can tell them, I'm a Buddhist, we are Buddhists. Because they always have this idea that we locals are afraid to stand up, we are obsequious, we quickly just welcome them, we agree to anything people say, we don't have any principles. Even if we are Buddhists, we simply believe anything, or say anything. So they have this kind of idea. So occasionally we have to remind them, no, we're not like that. We do have principles, we do stand up and say, we are Buddhists and this is the way we live, this is the way we practice, this is our faith. So that's an example of a lion roar, basically. You stand up for what is right, not with violence, but with dignity, with truth, and with joy. In other words, to tell people, this is the Dharma. Okay? So that's a lion roar. All right? Now then you have the word Maha in front, this qualifier. So once you see this Maha, it's very likely you'll see a Chula. So the Chula is the next lesson, Chula Sihanada Sutta. Okay? This is number 12, M12. Chula Sihanada is M11. So Maha can mean this is a longer sutta. Usually that's what it means. Or it reflects a more profound occasion and so on. Right? So it's just a term used to show that there are 2 or 3 similar suttas. Right, so Mahasiyanada Sutta translated as the greater discourse on the lion roar. And it is located in M12, Majjhima Sutta 12. It has an alternative name. It's called the Loma Hangsana Pariyaya. In section 64 of the sutta, that's why it is called the hair-raising exposition. Okay, here hair-raising meaning it is such an exciting, dramatic sutta that for those with faith, you feel this amazing joy, horripilation, we say, this hair-raising joy. So it's a kind of way of describing this kind of joy. Okay. And the theme is an overview of the Buddha's special qualities. So basically here, the Buddha is being challenged, right? The background story, you have this Sunakata. Okay, Sunakata was one of the Buddha's personal attendants at one time. For the first 20 years, the Buddha had quite a number, nearly a dozen attendants, none of whom really served him well. They were many of them were hard-headed, they had their own way, so it never really served him well. So first 20 years, the Buddha was quite young. Then at the end of that period, when the Buddha was like 55 years old, he got the monks together and said, look, I really need a good attendant. And that's when Ananda became the Buddha's attendant. But the first 20 years, you have like almost a dozen different attendants who didn't serve the Buddha well. Okay? In fact, I'm working on a set of 3 suttas right now where Nagita is the attendant. So he's this fat, lazy monk, and he's hoping that all these people come and donate lots of food. And the Buddha just tells him, this is not what it's about. Basically, this is not what the renounced life is about. He declares to Nagita, he says, let not fame come to me. Let not me meet with fame, nor fame meet with me. And then the whole sutta, that's the key sentence, okay? So you have a difficult monk there called Nagita. So here we have Sunakata. Sunakata was not happy with the Buddha because probably because the Buddha didn't want to perform miraculous psychic show of his powers. So he decided the Buddha has no psychic powers. The Buddha is just a teacher, just go around telling people to overcome suffering, and that's all. So he in fact left the order, he gave up monkhood, and he went around spreading this malicious talk against the Buddha. The monks heard this, and then they went back to the Buddha and told him, and the Buddha responded with this sutta. Okay? Now once you see this kind of development, we can say actually this sutta belongs more to the Digha Nikaya style of teaching, where the sutta is to rebut, to answer certain allegations, certain wrong ideas, and it gives a very comprehensive list of important teachings, topics, qualities of the Buddha to impress the outsider. Okay, so that would be the characteristic of the Digha Nikaya. So you have on the board, you can see the four Nikayas. So Digha Nikaya, the long suttas, they are mostly of that nature. There's, in a sense, there is not much instruction that we can use for actual practice. Anyway, the purpose is to show the non-Buddhists that Buddhism has a lot to offer, basically. It's like a prospectus. Now, in the Majjhima Nikaya, you have long suttas, yes. In fact, the length between the Digha Nikaya and Majjhima Nikaya, they're not really fixed. Sometimes the Digha Nikaya is shorter than the Majjhima, sometimes it's longer. It's just that in the case of the Majjhima, there is more instruction. For example, you have, in the Majjhima, you have in the Digha, you have the Maha Satipatthana Sutta, which is very long, which is also, actually, it is composed of two suttas, really. It is composed of M10, that is Satipatthana Sutta, and then you have the Satya Vibhanga Sutta at the end. In other words, you have the four Satipatthanas are given, and then there is this long exposition on the Four Noble Truths. So you have this really long sutta, okay? Whereas in the Majjhima, it's just the fourfold focuses of mindfulness. Okay? So if you want to practice meditation, you just go to M10, that's good enough, all right? So you have arrangements like that, all right? So that's Majjhima. In the Samyutta, you have more of instructive suttas, where suttas are grouped together by instructions according to teachings, okay? And then you have the numerical suttas. Numerical suttas, of course, they are numbers, okay? So it is meant more for lay people, all right? Many of the suttas are just listed, okay, here are the topics, sets of 1, sets of 2, 3, 4, and so on. And some of them, there are no details, just a list on this. In other words, you are presumed to already know the Digha, Majjhima, and the Samyutta also. But there are also long suttas anyway, okay? Okay, so, right, we're on page 1. We have not really started yet, huh? Now we have quite a long introduction here. These are the commentaries. This is the modern commentary. This is what makes the Sutta discovery special and important. The difficult parts are all given to you, the first 24 pages. Now we start on page 25. The Maha Sihanada Sutta, the greater discourse on the lion roar. M12. Okay, your page is 21, yeah, because I reprinted mine to get a clearer print. Thus have I heard, at one time the Blessed One was staying in the thick woods outside the city of Vesali, to the west. Now at that time, the young Licchavi Sunakata had recently left the Dhamma Vinaya, so he's given up being a monk. He said this before a crowd in Vesali. The recluse Gautama has neither the superhuman state nor the distinction in knowledge and vision worthy of the noble ones. Okay, this simply means he's claiming that the Buddha has no superpowers and he's not awakened. Right, so this is a slander, of course. 2.3. The recluse Gautama teaches a Dhamma following an inquiry based on his own wits, fabricated by reasoning. The Dhamma that is taught is only for some purpose, that of leading out for the complete destruction of suffering. Okay, so this is his claim, if you like. So he's saying that this Buddha, he's just putting his ideas together, and he's using his reasoning. It's all made up. Okay, and all that he teaches about ending of suffering. All right. Now, in a sense, the last part, what he says is true. Because later on, we see the Buddha's response will be very interesting. So you see sometimes some of these disciples of the Buddha, they have just enough good karma to be able to meet the Buddha and even become the Buddha's personal attendant in the case of Sunakata. They have done some really good karma up to that point. But they have not done enough good karma to stay on and learn the Dhamma. While many other disciples, they don't have the opportunity to be so close to the Buddha, to serve the Buddha, to be the Buddha's personal attendant. Because the Buddha's personal attendant, the Buddhupataka or Buddha Upataka, they are a special group of people who are very close to the Buddha, so they have a chance to see the Buddha every day, ask questions. So if they value the Dhamma, of course, this kind of service is really precious, very wonderful. So Sunakata has this wonderful ability, this wonderful karma, if you like. In fact, many of those earlier monks during the first 20 years, they have this chance to be with the Buddha, but they didn't really serve the Buddha well. And yet, the Buddha was very patient with them, and very often there were occasions for quite long Dhamma teachings. There's another supporter or another attendant of the Buddha called Meghiya. In fact, he's one of the most famous, other than Ananda. He would decide what to do for himself. So he went with the Buddha to the countryside. He looks across somewhere else. He says, "Oh, that's a nice place. I want to go there and meditate." The Buddha says, "Oh, it's not not the right time," but he insists he wants to go. So then, when he did that, he found that it was difficult for him to meditate. Lots of hindrances came and so on. And then he came back and told the Buddha about that. Then the Buddha explained what happened and so on. So the Meghiya Sutta is a very important teaching on spiritual friendship, on how this teacher, despite the fact the student is so hard-headed, he's patient with him, he never ever, not a single moment was recorded there that he scolded him. In fact, he kind of let him do what he wants, and then he realizes his folly. He comes back. Then the Buddha explained to him why he should not have gone. Of course, the usual way is 3 times. You see, the Buddha said, "Don't go." He said, "No." He said, "I want to go." He said, "Don't go." He said, "I want to go." And the third time, the Buddha said, "Okay, you're on your own." So we often hear the sort of thing, like a teacher says, "Do this," and a student say, "Oh, no, why don't you do it that way?" Right, so the Buddha says, "Okay, go ahead." And then in this case, Meghiya faces his own consequences, right? And it becomes a sutta. It's a very instructive sutta, right? All right, so here you have this very nasty ex-monk called Sunakata. He goes around slandering the Buddha, all right? So now you have monks all over the place, and the monks hear this. So what happens now? Section 3. Then the Venerable Sariputta, having dressed early in the morning, taking bowl and robe, entered Vesali for alms. Then the Venerable Sariputta heard the young Lichavi Sunakata speaking this before the crowd. So the whole thing is repeated. This Sunakata slandering the Buddha. Sariputta, this time it is Sariputta who hears this. So he listens. So normally what these monks would do is they rarely would rebut. They would not get into an argument, because the Buddha often tells them, do not do so, do not get into an argument. Just listen carefully, don't get upset. If it is true, fine, then we will correct it. If it is not true, that's fine too. Then we don't have to worry about it anyway. So in this case, Sariputta listens and then comes back and tells the Buddha. All right? So now in the second part, next section rather, third part, the Buddha responds. So here Sariputta goes to the Buddha. Let's see how does the Buddha respond. Section 4. So the Buddha is saying, for Sariputta, this Sunakata is a hollow man who is angry. For these are the words of one who is angry, right? So the Buddha said, well, it's obvious that he would say such things. He's not happy, he's very angry, right? And he is not very bright, he's not been really listening to the Dhamma or practicing. Sariputta, this hollow man, Sunakata, thinking, I will speak of blame, in fact, speaks in praise of the Tathagata. Sariputta, those who speak in praise of the Tathagata would speak thus. The Dhamma that he teaches is only for the purpose of the complete destruction of suffering, right? So this is a very interesting remark that Sunakata is making. You hear this even today, some people will say, oh, yeah, Buddhism talks nothing about suffering, but they don't realize how true it is. But when they say, oh, Buddhism only talks about suffering, there is what is called a subtext. They want you to think this is negative, all right? But that part is up to you. You don't have to say it's negative. You can respond and say, isn't that true? For example, right? Don't you see that all around you? And the Buddha has hit the nail right on the head by saying that, yeah, there's this suffering and we overcome suffering. Whereas other religions just dance around the real issue and never really settle it. So the Buddha said, well, actually, that part is true. What you say, he's actually saying the right thing. He doesn't know that he's actually praising the Tathagata, the teacher. Of course, the other things were not correct, but this last remark, this last claim that Sunakata made is very true. It's good, in fact, for the Buddha. So then, of course, you have this verse. So too is he the Blessed One, for he is Arahat, and so on. So the Buddha is saying, well, the Buddha knows this because he's awakened. So in that sense, he's speaking the truth. And then the Buddha gives this long list of qualities that the Tathagata has. So in this sense, it's about the life of the Buddha, because he's describing what is the Buddha, what defines the Buddha, or what are the qualities the Buddha has, what are the powers the Buddha has. Now notice here, the Buddha is talking to Sariputta. You might ask, doesn't Sariputta know all this? Not necessarily so. Because an Arahat doesn't have all the knowledge of the Buddha. So some things the Buddha will still have to tell the Arahat. But the fact that the Arahat he's already awakened, free from suffering, basically. It's just like, let's say you have this undergrad, he passes the exam and he's graduated, okay? But that doesn't mean he knows everything in that particular trait or subject. But he can, given the right circumstances, know whatever that needs to be known in that connection. That's the meaning here, okay? So there is this boundless potential. But in the case of the Buddha, of course, as Buddha, he is the this professor who has this very comprehensive knowledge about his field, right? Right. So next, the Buddha talks about the three powers. Okay. So here you have, I've numbered them with round brackets. Number one, the manifold psychic powers. So the Buddha begins with this because Sutakkata claims the Buddha doesn't have these powers. Okay? So the Buddha simply replies and say, section 6, indeed, Sariputta, for this hollow man Sutakkata, there is such drift or inference of the Dhamma about me thus. So too does the Blessed One enjoy the manifold psychic powers thus. Having been one, he becomes many. Having been many, becomes one. So this is the ability to what's called self-multiply. Okay. So you see this a lot in the monkey story, right? This ability, according to the sutras, comes with the ability to meditate up to the fourth jhana, basically. Number 2, he appears, then disappears. Okay, this in modern terms we say dematerialization. Now, of course, we may ask our modern scientific minds to say, "Wow, I've never seen any of these. Is this possible?" Let's just say you see a lot of this in the movies. For some reason, all the cultures, they talk about this. So these are stories telling us that there are powers of the mind which we do not understand at this point. So apparently this is possible. Of course, you don't have to believe in these things. Whether you believe or not these powers exist would not define or prevent you from becoming awakening. These are extra knowledge, if you like, okay? So in a sense, that's why it's put first also, because this is what people like to know. All right, so the second power is he's able to appear, disappear. The third one, he goes unhindered through walls, through ramparts, and through mountains as if through space. Okay, this is very interesting. Okay, this is also a kind of dematerialization, ability to move through walls. Now, I've actually seen a number of movies that show this, and the most interesting, I think, is in one of those space fiction movies. I can't remember which one. It's probably Star Wars or Star Trek. Probably more like Star Trek, I think. Apparently, this person, this scientist, has discovered a way of making the atoms and the molecules vibrate so to such a amplitude or such a level, for him that is, that he's able to move through any solid kind of wall or anything. So that's a very interesting theory there. In other words, it's scientifically possible. Okay, so this kind of stories actually help us to look into the future. Yeah, they may sound a little fantastic now, but one day probably science will be able to explain to us. But we're made to understand in the Buddha's time all this was possible because those monks were really great meditators. All right, the next one, number 4, power number 4 of the Buddha. He dives in and out of the earth as if it were water. Now, the Buddhists do have an explanation for this. Now, we have in other religions, they talk about, walking on water and turning water into wine and so on. But they never really explain why. All they do is to give excuses and say, oh, this is a blessing from higher up. But in early Buddhism, the ability of someone to, here it says, go into the earth as if it's water, or sink to the earth as if it's water, is the practice of what's called the water kasina. In other words, this particular meditator is able to materialize water. He meditates on water, and he could, with his mind, actually, as it were, transmute earth into water. Now, this idea of transmutation has been there for centuries, even a couple of millennia. Even in Europe, in the Middle Ages, there were people called alchemists who were experimenting, trying to see if this is possible. Can we transmute lead into gold, for example, right? And later on, modern scientists, in a sense, they could. Rutherford, for example, could somehow split the atom from hydrogen into deuterium or something like that. So he did manage to transmute one form into another. But it's a very tricky situation involving very high energy. So we're talking about really very high levels of energy here. And deep meditation does that too. It talks about very deep levels of energy, but mental energy in this case. So using this water kasina, in other words, this person goes to very quick deep meditation. Moggallana could do that. He goes into fourth jhana and he says water. So it just goes in and comes out another part of the landscape, right? So of course you have to know what you're doing. It's not that simple, right? So, but this kind of teachings show the possibility of the human mind, at least to imagine the kind of powers it can have. And you can see all these kind of ideas are always presented in a very systematic way, not a haphazard way. Next, number 5, he walks on water without sinking, as if it were earth. There you are, as if it were earth. That is very important. So this time, this meditator uses the earth kasina. He looks at water, and in his mind he says earth. Okay. He determines it as earth, so it becomes earth, right? The mind, in other words, has its ability to transmute matter. Now, there was a very interesting experiment I did when I was a kid, but after that I couldn't find the diagram to make that what's called the magic pendulum. It's a kind of cone with a point, up point pointing down, and it is truncated, so there's a hole at the bottom, and then at the top you have a little platform, and there's a hole in the middle, so you have this funnel-shaped kind of cone, and you tie a string, you hold it in your hand, okay, and you put your hand like arm on the table like that, and you hold this pendulum, and then you can put a round coin or square coin. We had square coins in Malaysia those days, so you don't see square coins nowadays, 1 cent coins, and then you have this big 1 cent coin. So you can put a round coin down there or a square coin down there, and then you put an opposite kind of coin at the top of the pendulum, and you just focus at the coin on the table, and then for some strange reason, this pendulum actually will swing without you actually making much effort, and it will swing, okay, back and forth, but that's not all. And this is something I've done myself a few times, and this is very interesting. You focus on the coin. Now, a round coin at the bottom is easy, actually. So you focus a round coin at the bottom. The pendulum is very near the coin. So this pendulum will go on swinging up, down, up, down. Then as you focus, slowly this pendulum will follow the shape of the coin. It's almost like there's some kind of magnetism there. It seems to guide the pendulum around the coin. Now, what this shows is some kind of mental energy has gone into this pendulum and made this pendulum move around the coin, and then you stop thinking again, then it will go back up, down, up, down. So it is the mind that is influencing the movement of this pendulum. That much I can say. Now, I'm not saying I'm psychic or have any kind of powers, but I think anyone can do that kind of experiment. It shows the mind's power can be transmitted into things somehow. Okay, of course we know emotional powers of our mind. If we are negative to someone, you can really hurt this person, right? So this person might even die as a result. So we have to be very careful about this kind of energy. And of course, today you have things like Reiki and so on, which uses this kind of energy too. Okay, so energy can flow from our mind through our bodies. Right, so next, power number 6. Sitting cross-legged, he goes through the air like a winged bird. All right, this is teleportation. So he goes into meditation and then he travels very much. This is a wonderful way for monks to travel nowadays. You don't need airplane tickets, visas, you can just go anywhere. It's really very convenient. I would recommend monks actually fly around this way. That means they got to go to deep meditation. They have to attain fourth jhana and really keep their precepts. Right? Okay, then the next one, number 7, with his hand, he touches and strokes even the sun and the moon. So mighty, so powerful. Of course, you can't take this literally. Okay, so he goes to meditation and he's able to kind of like in his vision, he's able to see the sun and the moon in this way. So this shows like in deep meditation, the meditator can overcome time and space. And then the number 8 is the last one here. He has power over his body up to as far as the Brahma world. Okay. Now, if the Buddha is talking about himself, this is very interesting. This shows the limit of the Buddha's own spatial reach, if you like, or what is technically called the Buddha field, Buddha Keta. In other words, how large is the Buddha's universe? Now, this will be of very great interest to science fiction writers, cosmologists, and so on. Now, of course, the word Brahma here has a broad meaning. See? It's not merely the Brahma world that we normally talk about. You can say Brahma here refers right up to the realm of the neither perception nor non-perception, if you like. So this is our universe, basically. So our Buddha, his Buddha powers, if you like, extend throughout this universe, so to speak. But the Buddha has declared that there are other universes, but they are probably not within our reach anyway, and we don't have to go that far. Okay, but it's really far anyway. So these are the 8 powers. Okay. Now, remember this first one that I mentioned to you, the 8. This is one set. This is the first set. This is called the manifold psychic powers, Idivida. Okay, forms one set of powers. Right? Now the second set, number round brackets 2, is called the divine ear or clairaudience. Okay, now the Buddha describes this. He says, "Indeed, Sariputta, for this hollow man Sunakata, there is such drift of the Dhamma about me thus. So too does the Blessed One enjoy the divine ear element, purified and surpassing the humans, both kinds of sounds, divine and human, whether far or near." So it is able to hear sounds which are far away. Okay. Now imagine if this was spoken during the Buddha's time. This sounds quite amazing. Right? But today we don't find this amazing anymore. Right? I mean, to us it's an everyday thing. You go back, you go to your computer, you talk to your friend who's in another part of the world. Right? So it's possible today without any psychic powers. So it seems as if you read this long ago, you might say, wow, this is not commonly possible, right? But today it is possible. So you see, this kind of talk also shows the range of the human mind, the powers of knowledge and science. So this divine ear is the natural ability to hear sounds from the distance. All right. Now then, number 3 is mind reading. Okay. Section 8. Indeed, Sariputta, for this hollow man Sunakata, there is such drift or inference of the Dhamma about me thus. Now, this line keeps repeating. The Buddha keeps saying it because he's saying, well, if you really think about it, this Sunakata, despite his claims against me, he knows all these things. He has heard all this, right? It's just that he has not seen them for himself. So this third power, mind reading, so too does the Blessed One know the minds of other beings, other individuals, having fully grasped them with his own mind. He knows or understands a mind with lust as a mind with lust. And he understands a mind that is without lust as being without lust. And then it goes in pairs like that. Then the next pair, a mind with aversion, without aversion, that is hatred. And then the next pair, a mind with delusion, without delusion. So these are the three roots, okay? Now this knowledge is useful, especially as a meditation teacher. You can kind of tell the student what difficulty he has and to deal with it, whether his trouble is with lust, hate, or delusion. And then he knows when the mind is contracted, the mind is narrow, and when the mind is distracted, and when the mind is exalted, that means a kind of a tinjana, or the mind is unexalted, surpassable mind, unsurpassable mind. This one is at higher levels, or whether it can go higher or not. Whether the mind is concentrated or unconcentrated, whether the mind is freed or not. Okay, so this last one, of course, shows the mind is totally free of the hindrances, or on a higher level, that the person actually awakened. So the Buddha has this ability to know the person's mind, in other words. And only the Buddha has this complete understanding. So he's able to look at the person and say, okay, this is your level, and he's able to teach him accordingly. Okay? All right, so those are the set of three powers. Sometimes you see them mentioned in the sutta as one set like that. But remember, although the Buddha talks about these powers here, elsewhere he says, all these powers may be great, fine, but even better than this, the greatest miracle is that of learning, education, right? So you have, for example, in the Kewata Sutta, the Buddha actually says that. So here the Buddha is saying things, he's teaching all this miraculous stuff to impress those people who like these things. So that they will say, okay, we know these things now, what else can you teach us? So he's waiting for that, what else can you teach us, that part, okay? So this is the idea here, right? So you find there are many combinations of such teachings in the sutta, right? And the one that we like very much is where it says, the important thing is we experience the miracle of learning, of education. In other words, we're able to hear something and then a wonderful change occurs in us. That is a great miracle. And I think you can do that if you are kind to people, you're a good listener, you know some Dhamma, and you are very careful when you talk. You don't talk the wrong things, right? I often get this on Facebook now, because our Facebook become a really wonderful medium for people communicating with us. Imagine some of them as really bad worries, and they say, "Can I talk to you?" I said, "Yeah." I said, just send me the questions, okay? Of course, some of them want me to talk with them on the phone and so on. That's a bit too difficult for me. It's going to be very time-consuming. But I encourage them to write down their problems clearly, the gist of their problem on Messenger. For example, there's one person, he wrote in and said, or she wrote in and said, I have this really nagging trouble. My mother was very sick, and then I gave her her favorite fruit. And after that, she became a bit more sick, So then later she died. I know it's terrible, whether I killed my mother or not. So he has this kind of fear. So this is one of the easiest things that a monk or a teacher will be able to explain. We just need to explain the nature of karma, nature of intention, and reassure this person, if you have no intention, greed, hate, or delusion, you shouldn't worry anything about this. And at the end of the answer, this person replies and says, "Oh, thank you so much. I feel so relieved. I'm very happy now." That's all that we want to hear. Now, that's a small miracle where you are able to uplift a person, free this person from all this darkness, this terrible sense of guilt and all kinds of negative thoughts. These are just thoughts we are burdened with because of wrong way of thinking, wrong views. So this person just needs someone to come along and say, well, these are the things, to explain in a very clear, simple, compassionate way, to be supportive. Never to have the thought, oh no, here's another problem, and all these people, why can't they solve their own problem? We should never think like that. We try our best, because this person, that few minutes you spend with this person is so precious to this person, and we should respect those few moments. It's not easy, yeah, of course, it's always the same problem, if you like. In fact, it is good for us that it's always the same problem, because if it's always different, then we might not know what to do, right? So if it is always the same problem, it's very easy. It's just like you are this GP, and then people come to you, it's always a headache, and all you do is just dispense Panadol, and you get paid for that. Isn't it wonderful, right? So we should not complain. It's a job that we do, in a sense, a duty. But if you are a Dhammafara, then it is also good karma you're creating for yourself. So this attitude is very important. This is a form of miracle, if you like, this ability to help people, uplift them from their sadness and sufferings and pains and so on. Okay? By the way, conversely, it's also very bad karma to cause desire to arise in the person, or hatred to arise in the person, and delusion to arise in the person. That is why the Buddha spoke against acting. So he says that if these actors cause all these horrible, very bad emotions in people, that's not good. But of course, Buddhist actors will, cause us to feel happy, right? That's very important. So in Buddhist aesthetics, joy, happiness is very important. Okay? All right. So that's the first part. Okay? Now, I don't know whether I should go to the second part now, because it's nearly time. You think it's enough for today? Should be enough for today, huh? So, I just stop at 3 powers, so should be enough. Any questions or comments? The next question is on the 10 powers, so I think we'll talk about that on another day.
In this sutta, we can say that the Buddha's powers we can divide them into mental and physical. The mental part is very easy to believe or accept. You can see things, read your mind, that's perfectly possible. But the physical part is a bit difficult to accept.
True.
Flying through air.
Yeah. The main reason is because we have not seen it.
Is there another interpretation of physical powers? I mean, you don't read them literally, but you read them in a certain understanding.
We can say that they are stories. You see, this is the guideline the Buddha gives us. If you find difficulty on a certain level, take it as a story. First of all, you ask yourself, this teaching, is it Dhamma level, story level? In fact, they're all story level. These are all stories relating to the Buddha. Okay? If the Buddha talks about Dhamma, he will say form, feeling, perceptions. That's Dhamma, is it? So these are not exactly this kind of Dhamma. They are concepts and ideas. So the Buddha gives us the latitude. You don't have to believe that the Buddha actually flew through the air, that the Buddha actually went from northern India to Sri Lanka, for example. In fact, the Sri Lankans believe the Buddha actually went to Sri Lanka a couple of times. But I don't think any right-thinking Sinhalese would accept that literally today. See? So we can take it as a story. So once you take it as a story, you say, well, it's just a story, like you read some of those fairy tales. So in other words, the Buddha's teaching reached that far, we can say. Another statement we can make is, it is found recorded in the stories by the ancient editors, they put in the stories. So that much we can say. The good thing about Buddhism, early Buddhism, is you don't have to believe them to be actual, literal, real events, historical events. They're just stories.
I mention this because from my understanding, these miracles, miracles of physical progress,
true, yeah,
they're very, very important in a lot of religions.
Oh yes.
Like Christianity, you got the resurrection.
Yes.
And in Christianity, the resurrection is the basis of all the beliefs in Christianity.
Not in Buddhism. So we
because a lot of people subscribe to Christianity because they believe in the resurrection and Jesus died to save the world and all that.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, and then in Hinduism also, I think you get all these miracles and all that.
So what about in Buddhism?
Sorry?
So what's your point here? What about, you're talking about, you are bringing back to Buddhism, right? So what's the analogy in Buddhism?
No, I'm saying that if miracles in Buddhism is important, then they are not
they're not important. They're not important. Yeah. Here, as I said, the Buddha is only telling this for those who like such stories.
Yeah.
Remember, there is another counter sutta to this, Kewata Sutta, where the Buddha mentioned these very same three miracles, but he said there's something greater than this. That is the miracle of learning. So you begin to see two usages of the miracle. One is in the old style, religious style, which you can believe or don't believe, whereas the other one is in the modern way of the mind growing, evolving, changing. And that's the Buddha said that's the one which is more important. So the simple answer is no, we do not stress any necessity to believe.
The mental part is totally acceptable. And people can through meditation transfer.
Oh yes, of course.
To another world.
Yeah.
So that part is okay.
So we Buddhists are fortunate. That's why we don't. These are not necessarily belief. They are just interesting stories. Maybe one day science might prove them. We do not know. Okay. So, but the important thing is always the mind. Yes. Okay, that's interesting. Yeah. Any other feedback, response?
Would you say the Buddha wanted the followers to take on Buddhism for the right reasons, for realization, inspiration, instead of, because I think even at the time there should be other people who are able to do such things. So I think he didn't want the wrong path.
Yeah, very true. In other words, we should know what is important. There are a lot of people who are very excited by the exterior, right? But then they themselves do not change, you see. So that would not be very helpful. I mean, let's just put it this way. You know a certain teacher, and this teacher has got what is purported to be psychic powers. The teacher can float into the air or emit light and so on, and you say, wow, this wonderful teacher, you worship him and do all kind of stuff. But then, what is it really about? It's about the teacher, it's not about you, see? You don't really benefit, So this is what happens in many other non-Buddhist religions. They have some god, some deity, some festival, some place. They say, oh, I'm going to a pilgrimage, So the Buddha says, if you are really pure in your precepts, you don't have to go to Gaya, you don't have to go to the holy places. Wherever you are, that is Gaya, that's the holy place. So you see the Buddha saying, you don't need to go to all these ritual things. Look within yourself. So there's always this message that you are the person, you have to look within yourself and help yourself. So yes, you're right in that. So you have these two aspects, exterior, interior. Anything else? The next set of 10 powers is a bit more elaborate, so I don't want to go there. We'll take another half an hour at least. So we'll do it the next time. In fact, we have all these sets of 8, which are very interesting. We can look at them together. Today we look at all this sutta by way of introduction and some general principles behind the teaching and so on. Okay, so we end here then. We have just finished studying the Mahasihanada Sutta to get some idea of the longer teachings, how the Buddha presents his various teachings, which should be understood at different levels, so that we are able to practice for our personal benefit, personal transformation, which is most important. Reflecting in this way, we are reminded of the Buddha's teaching of self-empowerment, of self-transformation, self-awakening. By all these good thoughts, the good karma of our actions, by the power of the three jewels, may we be well, may we be happy, at peace with ourselves, and that we may be blessed with the wisdom and courage to aspire at least to stream winning in this life itself. May our family and friends to be well and happy. May they too see the Dharma in this life itself. And those who are practicing the Dharma quickly attain the path. By the same token, may all those who have difficulties with the teachings to see the true path in this life itself. May all beings be well and happy. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu.